Between the two of them, the inside of Coates, Barker gets too heavily involved. And that's Whitehead and Coates.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome along to the VRRC and the penultimate round of the VRRC Touring Car Championship. We've been on quite the journey over the last 6 weeks. In fact, it's not the penultimate round at all. There are 3 weeks to go. And we have 6 races, therefore, remaining in the VRRC Touring Car Championship. Here at Barcelona in Spain, we are for the next 2 rounds before we head to Imola and the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. Andy McEwan here, hopefully reaching you from my slightly Wi-Fi-less office at the moment. So if you are struggling to hear me, I apologise in advance. But we will have Jack Oliphant here alongside me, who I'm sure will be able to direct you through the action nice and clearly. Always good to be working alongside Jack. Lewis Edwards is, as ever, in charge of the broadcast, and we'll be hearing from our race director, Rich Hayden, a little bit later on. But Jack, here we are, not at the penultimate round, 6 races to go, but we are getting towards crunch time now in the championship, aren't we?
Yeah, you worried me then slightly. I did think I'd missed a week all of a sudden out somewhere. But no, Barcelona, a great circuit that hopefully will promote some good racing. It'd be interesting to see what kind of layout we've actually got cracking, because obviously it changed relatively recently, haven't we, towards the back end of the circuit. So whether or not we have that lovely chicane that everybody loves in the Sector 3 with the sharp hairpin, or whether we have a bit more of a sweeping look, we'll have to wait and see when we get our live pictures. But then, as you said, off to Imola, and then, of course, a Brands Hatch, and the championship, to be honest, couldn't be much tighter.
It could not. The points are extremely interesting coming into this round, and this all comes off the back of a really entertaining pair of races a week ago at the Nürburgring, where Nicky Taylor managed to do something that no one's done here at the VRRC for quite some time, having not quite snatched pole position in qualifying. He started second. He won race 1 after finding a way past Jack Smith in the early stages, and then came from the very back of the grid in race 2 to claim the reversed grid win as well. So 2 race wins in the same night for Nicky Taylor. Certainly the first time in this championship that it's been done. I think it was maybe halfway through the previous one that Eric Axelson more than likely was last able to achieve that. Jack Smith still had a solid night though, second in race 1, 5th in race 2, so he was the second highest point scorer of the night, with Josh Martin the third highest point scorer, having again had a reasonably competitive night, 5th in race 1, 3rd in race 2, and pulling off some really cracking overtaking moves as he went. This, therefore, is what we have with the points, and as Jack said, extremely tight. Nicky Taylor, who went into those 2 races at the Nürburgring 6th in the championship, arrives here at Barcelona with a points lead of, 7 points over Scott Bugner and Kyle Felvers, tied for second, but Jack, that comes after a penalty was applied last week for Kyle.
Yes, and obviously that is everything we say at the end of an evening is taken with a pinch of salt, isn't it? Because there are judicials to be given out, and hopefully everybody is understanding of all of those sorts of routines. And there's always race debriefs that Rich goes through all the different incidents that might have happened in the previous week and the subsequent punishments that go along with it, and hopefully teaching the drivers to be a little bit sort of more aware of those sort of situations by the next week, of course. And I think they happen on a Monday night, I believe. So hopefully that's still fresh in the memory for a lot of those drivers. All in all, though, Andy, I thought we had a pretty clean event at Nürburgring. I seem to remember Rich Hayden also agreeing with me. So I think he's encouraged the drivers to try and take that into Barcelona. It's another nice wide circuit, but as soon as you get onto that gravel, it can be a little bit punishing.
Yes, definitely. It is a circuit that is lambasted often for not really producing very good racing. Certainly, that is true, I think, of single-seater racing.
Yes.
Although you could argue that for many racetracks. But touring car racing, something rather different. And I actually think we're in for a really good pair of races tonight because yes, it's wide. You've got that really long pit straight, so the slipstream effect, which is quite sizable in these touring cars, should start to take effect and allow for some overtaking down into turn 1. And then lots of sequences of corners that go left to right to left to right, but you can quite comfortably go side by side through all of them. So I do think that we will get some good racing here tonight. That then is how the championship looks, arriving here at Barcelona. In 3 weeks' time, we will have a champion, and that champion will receive, as ever, a pretty tasty prize. The top 3 drivers, in fact, in the championship come season's end, will all receive trophies of increasing size based upon where you finished in the championship. well as gaming displays, courtesy of our championship sponsor Aegon, also increasing in size. Third place in the championship, receiving the 24-inch gaming display, the 27-inch display for our championship runner-up, and the 34-inch curved Aegon gaming display for our champion. There's also the driver of the round, which is voted upon by myself, Jack, by Lewis. Rich occasionally has some input in that as well, and we will often take input from the chat as well. So if you're watching along at home on YouTube and you want to let us know who you think by the end of the night has deserved driver of the round, then do let us know. It's not always just the driver who scored the most points over the round. That's a bit dull and predictable, but we will often go for a driver who really entertained us, pulled off some good overtakes, a good recovery drive. You get the picture. So anyone that you think's really impressed you tonight, do let us know. Right then, one more thing to do before we dive into the qualifying session, and that's to familiarise ourselves with the Barcelona circuit.
Hello and welcome to Barcelona for round 6 of the Aegon by AOC Touring Car Championship Season 3. We are here for the track guide now, heading down towards turn 1. You want to brake at about 120 metres down to third gear. Take a nibble of the apex curb but not too much, as that will cause the car to bounce and send you too far wide. Turn 3 you will need to lift, so take the lift early in the corner, which will enable you to power through the corner and carry nice exit speed. Watch out for these dark green Astro strips, as they can send the car really wide and it will give you a track cut. Up to turn 4, down to third gear, keep the car as planted as you can, take a late apex and pick up the power nicely. Make sure not to touch this grass on the left hand side as we head over to the right hand side. For turn 5, down to second gear, the car gets a bit unsteady through the mid corner, but we power through it nicely, using up all of the road that we can. Now through 6 and up towards turn 7, we go down to third gear, the car gets really unsteady through the mid corner there, but we carry it nicely through the corner and using all of the road through turn 8. Turn 9, you want to be on the power as early as you can, using that curb again for rotation but not too much that it bounces. Now on the back straight, heading down towards turn 10, really difficult braking point to spot. Go down to second gear, take a slightly later apex to make sure you don't drift wide onto this AstroTurf on the right hand side too much. As we now head up towards turn 12, you don't want to run too far wide, as then the track loses grip slightly further wide than that. Then make sure you get off this AstroTurf before braking for turn 14, and then into the final chicane. Go down into second gear, sacrificing the left to make sure we get a good run through the right. Don't use too much of the Astro, as that can send you wide. Final corner is nicely flat out, and that completes a lap of Barcelona.
So the Circuit de Catalunya in, Catalonia region of Spain, you'll be surprised to hear, is a really great venue to go racing, and we'll be doing that within the next 5 minutes or so. But first, we've got the small matter of qualifying to get through, and the cars are out on the circuit now with Kyle Felvis at the moment setting the pace. He, Jack, is one of several drivers that we really now need to start focusing in on as championship contenders, because at the top of the championship tree, 14 points cover the top 5 drivers. They are Nicky Taylor, Carl Felvis, Scott Buckner, Josh Martin, and Eric Axelson. Their results in each of the final 6 races this season are going to be crucial, given how close these points have been.
Yeah, I'm glad you're the one who enjoys statistics and keeping an Excel spreadsheet on it, because I don't fancy keeping up with that, to be honest. It's really, really tight. It's exactly what we come to expect, not only from VRRC racing, but touring car racing in general, isn't it? I mean, it's really nice to see all of these drivers getting up close and personal with each other on track, but also in the championship order. So fingers crossed they can keep it nice and clean, and we can have a good, solid result tonight from all of those drivers. And of course, maybe some surprise packages up there. It's weird to say, Andy, but the person who's just gone second is arguably one of those surprise packages. Eric Axelson, not necessarily been at the pace so far this season, after 2 seasons of utter domination, it's safe to say, isn't it? But yeah, he's just got himself up to second, just behind Carl Felvis. Are we going to see a return to form?
He will certainly be hoping so. Bear in mind that in our previous championship, the MX5 Cup, we had the same number of races, or actually just slightly fewer races, but he was only off the podium that entire season twice. Now, in the 10 races that we've had so far this season, he's only been on the podium twice. One of those was a race win at Spa from pole position, the other one being a third place in round 1 at Portimao. So Eric Axelsson just hasn't been knocking out those podium results in the same way that we're used to seeing. I wonder whether perhaps this is the week on which he turns it around. His results a week ago don't necessarily suggest that. Again, a 4th and a 6th were solid, but unspectacular. He really could do with winning some more races. If you compare that, for example, to Nicky Taylor, who now has 3 race wins against his name, that's the sort of hit rate I think you're going to need to try and win this championship. Nicky, by the way, is 3rd fastest in the session, just a fraction, 3/100ths of a second quicker than Joel Lask, with Josh Martin and Elliot Dalton Ayres next. A driver who, for the 2nd or 3rd week in a row really now, Jack, is struggling, it seems, is Scott Bugner, who for a long time was our championship leader.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to have... Oh, I thought he just jumped up the order, but actually, Alok Iyengar hasn't he? He's jumped into the top 5. Really good pace from Alok. Nice to see him up there as well. Yeah, no, Scott Bugner, a bit of a shame. He just seems to have dropped off it somewhat. No real explanation behind it. I don't know if he's necessarily got an explanation, whether he was able to practice a lot more early in the season, hasn't been able to on these later tracks, but they're not exactly foreign tracks to us. We've not necessarily done Catalonia very often before, but certainly Nürburgring we've done plenty of times. So I don't believe the one before that, the Norris Ring, we've done loads, but I've definitely covered it. And he would have been part of that championship, Scott Bugner, because he's been around for a long time. So yeah, it's a strange one, to be honest. Yeah, very curious to see that he's only just inside the top 10. You never know. We've still got a couple of laps left. He could pull out one flying lap. But to be honest, if he hasn't got that consistency, everybody else does seem to have the advantage.
I mean, he's 9/10ths off the pace. He did just improve on his most recent lap, but only by a couple of tenths. So that sort of tells me that he's operating at or towards his limit of pace. But look how close it is. If he could find another 1/10 of a second, he'd be 8th. If he can find 2/10 of a second, he'd be inside the top half dozen. So it is fractions, and this is all over a lap that is nearly 2 minutes in length. So such is the competitive nature of this touring car championship. You only need to find a little bit, and you can jump up several positions on the grid. His teammate Joel Lask is not going to find any more positions because he's bailed for the pit lane. So too is Paulo Tempera, who was one of 2 drivers to be handed a 20-second penalty after last week's racing. The other one, significantly, was Kyle Felvers. That 20-second penalty dropped him all the way down to 14th in the running order in that reversed grid race, which means it was the first round this season at which Felvers hasn't had a top 5 finish. And it was also, not coincidentally, the week in which he lost the championship lead. So lots of things shifting around, but Felvers at the moment, Jack, seems to be bouncing back well.
Yeah, it's not about how you get knocked down, it's about how you get back up, is the old famous saying, isn't it? And clearly... Probably. It's somewhere in my memory anyway, that saying. So it's, yeah, impressive that Kyle could actually manage to come out here and put on a show. He's clearly done that in qualifying. He's just crossed the line. He hasn't improved his best time, but he doesn't need to necessarily. That's Eric Axelsson, who's not going very quickly on his last lap, can pull out something special from sector 3. Scott Bugner does pull out something, I wouldn't say special, but it's something better, and he pulls himself into the top 7, just behind Josh Martin. And probably the star performer from qualifying, I would say, is Alok Iyengar in the top 5. We don't often see Alok up there, but maybe he's starting to find his feet in this touring car.
Alok's best qualifying result of the season so far, 13th a week ago at the Nürburgring. So yes, you're bang on the money there. He has had a podium, that coming in the first grid race back at Portimao at season start, but that was, as I said, reverse grid race, and he rather escaped most of the carnage in that one. Josh Martin actually knocks him down to 6th there, with Josh improving at the end of the session. So with the exception of Bugner, we have got all of our championship front runners really at the front, haven't we? Felvers, Axelsson, Taylor. Joel Lask is a little bit further back, but not mathematically out of it by any stretch. Josh Martin is definitely a contender, and Scott Bugner is 7th. So they're all sort of rising to the front of the grid, it would seem, and barring any real improvements from these last 2 drivers, Andy Carroll in the Alfa Romeo, Alok Iyengar in the Honda, it looks as though it will be a Felvers and Axelsson front row, with Kyle Felvers nabbing the pole position, and with it, I believe, a point or 2 towards his championship campaign. So definitely a good way to bounce back this from Kyle. We are nearly at the end of the qualifying session, Jack. We'll wait and see how Carroll and Iyengar go, but a very interesting grid.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Race 1, so close as those two actually bailed for the pit lane. I was about to say that neither of them looked like they were going to improve. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting, very close. I reckon it'll be a bit cagey as well. Obviously, we're expecting gloves off for the second race, which of course will be the reverse grid. But before we have a chat to Kyle Felvers, we're going to go to a very quick ad break.
Welcome back, everybody, to Barcelona and the VRRC Touring Car Championship. Qualifying just complete here ahead of two 20-minute races as we head well and truly into the latter part of what has been a fascinating championship campaign. As I said, that qualifying session has just been completed, and for the second time this season, it is Kyle Felvers who finds himself on pole position. Kyle, do you have many holidays in the Spanish or Portuguese part of the world? Because this seems to be where you're really quick. You were on pole in Portugal, and now you're on pole in Spain as well.
No, I wish I did. I wish I had more holidays in these parts of the world. It'd be nice. No, to be fair, I can't believe I got pole. I really expected Eric to get there, and my lap, I hooked. Like, it was the most hooked lap I've ever done on this track, and it felt really good, and it put me on pole.
Yeah, Eric, we think, was on a lap that could have challenged you, but it all went away from him towards the end, so you've ended up on pole position. It is an interesting track, this, isn't it? A really flowing track, and actually, I think, quite good fun, especially in something like a front-wheel drive touring car.
Yeah, I mean, I prefer it in a rear-wheel drive, but I prefer most tracks in a rear-wheel drive. But yeah, I think it will be good for racing. But I think there could be carnage on lap 1 if people don't go careful. Because of those two curbs that are obviously on turn 1 and 2, they stick up a fair bit, so that can cause some issues sometimes. But from last week, looking at last week, it should be a really good round and really clean.
Yeah, that's what we want to see, certainly, because I think this is the first time in a while, Kyle, that we've had not just 1 or 2 drivers at this stage who are fighting for the championship, but 5, 6, 7 of you who realistically could be crowned champion come the end of the season. The points are so tight, and I guess when you're out there on track at this stage, you're used to kind of focusing on 1 or 2 of the drivers. How hard is it knowing that pretty much everyone you go wheel to wheel with is a title contender?
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly because of the cars. These cars have been nailed by, obviously, everyone at VRRC that did everything to them. They've just been amazing in terms of racing and performance, and everyone's so equal. So it's really like easy for everyone to be in the title fight, and it does definitely make a great championship.
It certainly does. We've really enjoyed watching it. We've enjoyed watching you, and we wish you the best of luck from pole position. Perhaps that 3rd victory of the season could be coming your way.
Thanks, Andy.
So Kyle Felvers then pole position for that first 20-minute race here coming up in just a few minutes' time. And this, I think, will, Jack, be a very interesting race, as he said. He's got a couple of people near him who really do need some good results, Axelsen in particular. But as I said, Axelsen's only 14 points off the championship lead. So whichever way you look, there are going to be battles, and they are all going to be significant.
Yeah, to be honest, when you said about 14-point gap in the top 5, I didn't register that Axelson was in it. We've been so talking so much about how we're basically writing him off and how he hasn't had a good season and everything like that, but he is still there or thereabouts. And I thought it was Jack Smith, who unfortunately isn't with us tonight because he's got a university commitment, I believe, which is a poor excuse this close to Christmas. I can't believe any students are actually working, but there we go. He's obviously a committed student, which is good. But yeah, Eric, he does need to get back on track. He needs to be able to put in some solid results. Second place, I don't think would be anything to shake a stick at. So, yeah, I expect him to be his usual cold, conservative self out there on track.
Yeah, for a while he used to race for under a team named the Swedish Assassin, which, apart from being very difficult for me to say, was, I always thought, quite an apt name. But perhaps the Silent Assassin is actually the better way to describe him, because you're right, he's flown so far under the radar this season, and we just haven't seen him coming. And I would not be at all surprised if in 3 weeks' time he's up there lifting the championship trophy, because he's just got this way about him that he seems to arrive at the front of the championship at just the right time. We shall see. He lies 5th in the points. Josh Martin is 4th. Scott Bugner is 3rd. Felvis and Nicky Taylor, the HFT Racing teammates, both running different cars for this season. Nicky in a Hyundai, Carl Felvis in an Audi. But as Carl was saying, all of the cars identical in performance. They will perhaps have slight differences in driving characteristics, and that maybe explains why some drivers have good weeks and bad weeks. But generally speaking, the car's identical in performance. The points situation that we have arriving here at Barcelona very much proving that point. So, Jack, predictions for this first race. That run to turn 1 is a long one, isn't it? The one thing I am going to predict is that it's going to be a very lively first corner.
Yeah, I mean, it's a safe bet, in my opinion, to say that Eric Axelson will get the better start, and they're pretty much alongside each other, aren't they? These touring cars are not separated by very much. So Eric will have, I reckon, his nose up his inside by turn 1. Carl Felvis is on the right-hand side as we look at it, which is the outside of turn number 1. I don't think that's going to do him any favours, to be honest, because, as I said, Axelson has such good launch out of anything with 4 wheels. He'll be able to get his nose in and around where Carl Felvis doesn't want it. Nicky Taylor, Joel Lask. I think Joel Lask just needs to be able to follow Eric Axelson, so expect another little lunge there. But Nicky and Kyle, I reckon they're probably in touch with each other right now on Google Meets or Discord or something, probably talking about exactly what they're going to do to help work together on this race.
Let's see then. That's the prediction from Jack Oliphant. Let's see how accurate that is then. The red lights are going out. On the right is pole position. That's Carl Felvis. On the left is Eric Axelson. Hyundai versus Lincoln Co. on the front row. The lights go out, and in a cloud of tyre smoke, they accelerate towards the first corner. And Felvis has had a good start. Axelson, strangely, didn't get away all that well, and he will have to defend from Nicky Taylor slightly as they rush towards turn number 1. Alec Iyengar there on the inside line in the Honda. They fan out into the braking zone. Felvis leads. Axelson second, but Taylor trying to go around the outside.
Yeah, really good start by Carl Felvis. Oh, as Eric Axelson gets tagged by Nicky Taylor, who tried to get back on circuit. I'm not entirely sure. There doesn't seem that much room, to be honest, for both of those cars. So maybe a racing incident that'll be put down to as Axelson holds on to that second position and actually has Joel Last for company. And whereas Nicky Taylor dropped down to 5th position, so not out the race at all. But Carl Felvis is the one leading the entire pack, isn't he? A great start, and he's taking advantage of some scrapping over second place as Eric Axelson now gets a bit of free air as Joel Lask and Scott Bugner, the two teammates, decided to bump into each other and allow Josh Martin to have a little bit of a lunge as well. Really good start by the top 2. Everybody else just managing to get through without too many incidents.
Well, what a start by Bugner. He started 7th. He's into 3rd now.
Wow.
Took advantage there of some contact between Josh Martin and Joel Lask at turn 3, and turn 4 indeed. And yeah, he has got himself right up into a podium place. So you're right, Felvis leads, 1.3 seconds the advantage. Axelson second. It's Bugner third, the first of those two sort of grey camo Hyundais, with Lask his teammate 4th. Josh Martin is 5th. Nicky Taylor down to 6th after that contact with Axelson, from which actually Axelson emerged reasonably well. He was completely sideways in front of the pack at the second corner of the race. Jack, that's not normally a position you can easily come back from.
No, and especially at Barcelona, I thought he was just going to be able to, well, basically get parked and all of a sudden everybody T-boning him, but he managed to keep his foot in it. Everybody else managed to figure out what was going on ahead of them, so they all managed to avoid each other somewhat, but really good driving by Axelson. Nicky Taylor, and will probably be cursing the fact that he, in his eyes, probably wasn't given enough room, and in Eric Axelson's eyes, probably thought that Eric had done everything he needed to and forcing Nicky off and, well, forcing Nicky into a tight situation, shall we say. He's actually dropped down behind Elliot Dalton-Ayres now, who we're currently watching chase Josh Martin. So Nicky's not even anywhere near overtaking Elliot Dalton-Ayres, as Dalton-Ayres actually looks up the inside of Josh Martin. This is a fight for the top 5 into the apex. Martin has managed to hold some good momentum around the outside of the first apex. Can he get it all collected up for turn number 3? That's probably the more important one. Yes, he can, and Nicky Taylor's being invited back into it.
He is, isn't he? It's a real momentum circuit, this one, and so once you do start battling side by side, you lose so much of that momentum that you lose ground to the cars ahead, and indeed the cars behind can close in too. It's also a circuit, as you can see, that has lots of these long, constant radius right-handers, and that is going to really punish that left front tyre. This, I would hazard a guess, is one of the hardest tracks that we race on this season on tyres. John Jones has done some hard racing, perhaps a bit too hard, because he and Kenny Press are recovering from a moment up at turn number 4. And they will rejoin at the back of the pack. But yes, in the back of the drivers' minds right now, Jack, has to be a little bit of tyre conservation. That left front tyre is going to definitely do some work today.
Yeah, it's something that you never really want to go into a race thinking about, is it? But you do have to, race in every single track. And that is one of the challenges that Catalonia faces. And you have to be able to adapt to that. I think a lot of drivers will be able to adapt to that. I think Carl Phelps has worked a lot on his driving technique for front-wheel drive cars, even though he still claims that he prefers the rear-wheel drive cars. That's fine, but he can't say that he's not quick in a front-wheel drive car. Has he got the tyre conservation? Is it the same as Eric Axelson's? We know how smooth he is. Scott Bugner, who we've said already, really took advantage. It's not like he's tortured his tyres to get up there into 3rd place. It's about what he can do now with a teammate and Joel Last just behind playing rear gunner. How is Joel Last doing in the championship, actually? So he's in 7th place and not really in with a shout at winning the overall title. Does that mean he plays the good teamwork game? We'll have to wait and see. As Elliot Dalton-Ayres has Nicky Taylor up his chuff.
He does. In fact, he's got Nicky Taylor alongside him, but that's the outside line for turn number 1. So Nicky will have to really be brave to make this work. Who's latest on the brakes? It looks like it is Dalton-Ayres, who on the inside line will hold position. But yeah, interesting point you make there about the teammates, Scott Bugner and Joel Lask. Lask is 31 points off the championship lead. He is only, though, about 24 behind Scott Bugner, so it's a reasonable amount. Certainly Bugner is the driver from that team most likely to win the championship, you'd say, but hasn't of late always been the fastest of the two. That was Taylor rattling into the side of Dalton-Ayres, and he continues to try and get this 6th place away. But again here, a good example of what I mentioned pre-race. You get the inside for one corner, it is rarely the inside for the next one, and so Taylor can't quite find a way through.
Yeah, they're all medium-speed corners, and they're very long corners, like you mentioned already, in terms of tyre degradation. There's only really 1 or 2 places on the track where you can really lunge into someone and have to stop the car on the apex. Everything else is a little bit tricky to sort of, lunge up the inside. There's not massive braking zones, and that just creates... well, you can carry a lot of momentum around the outside of one of these corners, put it that way, but not enough to be able to overtake anybody. So it's a relatively easy circuit to defend. That's why a lot of people in the F1 sphere don't particularly enjoy watching Catalonia. But equally, as I said, you have to race at every single track. You have to find ways of getting through the pack at every single track. Around the Norris Ring, a lot of people found that difficult as well for completely different reasons. And some people managed it and some people didn't. Around the Nürburgring, that's a bit of a track where you can make opportunities for yourself and force people into mistakes. And now we've gone to a track that's pretty much the opposite. We're going to have to start seeing people getting a little bit more inventive.
It is hard to overtake here, certainly, in that there aren't that many big braking zones. There's the obvious one down into turn 1, where I suspect Nicky Taylor is going to have another go now at Elliot Dalton-Ayres, and then there is that run down into turn 10 as well at the end of the back straight. But being a momentum circuit, you generate your overtaking opportunities, often by forcing mistakes out of the driver ahead. Nicky is going to prove me wrong, though, by simply trying to outbrake Elliot Dalton-Ayres into turn 1, but that is difficult to do, as Jack was saying, and Dalton-Ayres will hang on. But this is the kind of situation that Nicky really wants to try and capitalise from. He's got Dalton-Ayres offline now through this first sequence of corners. Elliot will be slow through turn number 3. If Nicky can duck up the inside into turn 4, he might have half a chance. He's definitely the quicker of the two, but Dalton-Ayres is covering well, gets to the inside into turn number 4, and Nicky's surely not going to be able to go right round the outside. He's going to try it. In fact, he might just have enough traction. The next corner is a left-hander, and Dalton-Ayres will have to leave him some space. Nicky Taylor keeps on coming, gets to the apex first, and will, I think, with a bit of a rub-down, move into 6th place. But that was a good example there, Jack, of how you don't necessarily make a lunge to overtake here. You force the mistake or force the defensive manoeuvre from the car ahead and capitalise on that loss of momentum.
Yeah, ironically, even though the tracks are not similar in any way in terms of appearance or even sort of the way it drives, but it's very similar in the way it races to Brands Hatch, which of course is the last place we'll be visiting on this touring car tour. It's a case of you have to be able to build that momentum up, build that mistake in the other driver. I think I was racing around Brands Hatch once. It took me 2 laps to sort out one move just by trying to put the driver offline constantly, and then waiting for them to make a mistake. It's not as easy as I said some other circuits. Eric Axelson, though, has eaten a lot of time away from Kyle Felvis, our pole position man, though, hasn't he, Andy? And I think Eric's looking like he's in the mood, potentially. Now he's shaking off Scott Bugner and Joel Last to try and put some moves on Kyle Felvis.
I think you're absolutely right. This racetrack has got Eric Axelson's name written all over it, really, hasn't it? Because this is the kind of place where you've got to be smooth, you've got to be flowing, you've got to be patient, you've got to manage the tyres, and that's something that Axelson really does excel at. You can see the way he's been closing in, taking about 0.3 of a second a lap out of Kyle over the last couple of laps, and as we start lap number 5, the Audi is in his crosshairs, and look at the gap that he's got back to Bugner in third. 2.3 seconds already is that advantage, so not only is Axelson quicker than the leader, but he's got no pressure from behind.
Yeah, which is bliss in terms of what he needs to focus on now, isn't it? Because all he has to do is hit his braking zones, have half an eye on maybe where Kyle Felvis is slightly slower. Does he miss an apex here? Is he susceptible to missing a braking zone? The braking zone into turn 5 there, I always think is a little bit tricky because the track keeps dropping away from you. You have to be quite patient on the accelerator on the exit as well. And it's little details like that that Eric will be starting to dial into where he can attack Kyle, where he can potentially put him offline, where Kyle maybe is a little bit fearful of the driver behind, the silent assassin sneaking up on him from second place. Into turn 10 is an obvious overtaking opportunity. Kyle will be fully aware of that, but so will Eric Axelson. I think he's going to be a bit smarter here.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric perhaps does need to just think about what we were just talking about. Don't necessarily go for the lunge. Just try and force Kyle to defend. Kyle occasionally can become a little bit erratic in his defence, or perhaps just make a small mistake when he's defending. We have seen that out of him in the past. Whereas Axelson known for being really cool under pressure, and the Swedish assassin, renamed to the Silent Assassin unofficially by our commentary crew tonight. I think I prefer that. It certainly depicts the way in which he's been performing this year, flying under the radar, or this season I should say, flying under the radar, not winning many races, but proving that he's able to bank the points when he can. He's closed right in on Kyle Felvis now, and we're only halfway through the race, so really that first part of the race in which Axelson's done all of the catching, that's not even the bit of the race you'd expect him to be strong in. It's the second half that we're heading into.
Yeah, and it's the Silent Assassin. He's silent but deadly. These sort of things, and that can knock you off your socks sometimes. So I think Kyle Felvis really needs to think about how he's going to be treating the tyres, and maybe just sacrificing those couple of tenths of a second to be able to still be in the race by the end of it, and of course be able to mount some kind of defence or even go on the attack again once Eric Axelson potentially gets back through on him. It's about how you deal with that. But equally for Kyle, second place is not the end of the world. If we're looking at his championship rivals, Nicky Taylor, currently, where is he? He's still down in 6th place, although he's overtaken. Yeah, he overtook Elliot Dalton, isn't he? Scott Bugner, obviously not really anywhere. Well, actually, no, Scott Bugner, sorry, he's jumped up to 3rd place. So actually, second place for Kyle is not ideal, but it's still ahead of his championship rivals, is what my point is getting at. And there's always that race too, where there's always going to be a little bit of carnage. And around a track like that, people are going to be jumping at the gun to try and get past on the first 2 laps. There's going to be a little bit of bumping and barging.
Yeah, absolutely. And our top 6 drivers right now in the championship are essentially our top 6 drivers in the race are essentially our top 6 in the championship, because with Jack Smith absent tonight, he will likely fall behind Joel Lask into 7th. So those cars are all going to be starting at the back of the grid together in race 2, and it's all very significant for the points, as is this battle, because Josh Martin in 5th position is starting to apply the pressure now rather to Joel Lask, who is at the moment, whether this is advertently or not, playing a good rear gunner role to his better placed in the championship teammate Scott Bugner. But Scott Bugner, 3rd in the points, is only 4 points ahead of Josh Martin, who sits 4th. So the fact that Martin at the moment is stuck behind Joel Lask is significant, but for how much longer? He's in the draft now as they go down the pit straight, and interestingly, Lask doesn't move across to defend at all. So Josh Martin has the momentum, he has the inside line, and is he good on the brakes? Yes, he is. So Josh Martin into 4th place, and now only 1 place behind the driver who is next in the championship table to him.
Yeah, Dave in the YouTube chat will be very excited about that one. I'm sure he's already been screaming at his monitor saying he wants the Mean Green Racing team to win. And, well, at the moment, he might not end up winning. We might have a green winner, but it's probably more likely to be Eric Axelson, to be honest, at this point. With Josh Martin starting to make the moves. And to be honest, Andy, I'd say he made that look relatively easy compared to a lot of the other moves that we've seen, haven't we, where they've sort of been built up over a couple of corners. Josh Martin just able to get the drive off that final couple of corners and get into that first corner with his nose ahead. Nice and simple.
Indeed, and now, of course, he'll try and do the same thing to Bugner, won't he? Because I think he's got some pace in hand here, Josh Martin. How long have we been saying that Josh Martin always seems to come on strong in the second half of the race? And I don't know whether we haven't really analysed his driving style in the same way that we have Eric Axelson, but I would not be surprised if Josh is another one of those really smooth and subtle drivers. And here we go. It's almost as if Lewis Edwards is listening to what we're saying. We're riding on board now with Josh Martin. Jack, you're the professional racing driver. What are you seeing?
There we go, isn't it? So you know full well I can't drive a front-wheel drive car, and yet you made me do this. Okay. Well, what I can say is with any race car, and they like you and probably lots of people watching, is really we're looking at a nice smooth turning input, aren't we? We don't want to be able to jerk the car left and turn 3 times before you get even into the apex, and you also don't want to be understeering wide. So it's all about seeing if it's just one nice smooth motion with the steering wheel, and if he can get that, then you're on your way to winning the tyre battle already. That's about 50% of the battle, because of course if you're on the exit of a front wheel drive car, on the exit of a corner with a front wheel drive car, you accelerate too early and you keep having to come off and on. You have to turn the steering wheel a little bit more. It can get all a little bit messy. So he's at his peak there, and all he has to do is wind the steering wheel off nice and smooth. He doesn't have to go for it again to try and get the car turned in at all. So yeah, really nice bit of movement here from Josh Martin. But to be fair, we could probably jump on board with any of the top 10 here at VRRC and see a similar style of driving, because they are all so quick and so evenly matched, as we saw in qualifying. But I am very impressed, actually. As soon as he gets to his apex, that's when the steering input is at its max, and he doesn't try and chuck it in or do any more steering after the apex either. Really impressive at the moment from Josh Martin.
You see, you talked yourself down there, Jack, but that sounded dangerously like you knew what you were talking about. That I concur. This is a very smooth ride on board with Josh Martin, isn't it? And you could see even from the nearly a lap now that we've been riding on board with him, he is closing inexorably upon Scott Bugner in 3rd position. So that gap is coming down. That smooth driving style is working, and you're absolutely spot on. It probably is helping the tyres a little bit. Funnily enough, not the way at all that I would approach driving a front-wheel drive touring car. I like to back the car into the corner, hack away at the steering wheel,
so
and
do I.
the handbrake if that was allowed. But it's, yeah, might be quick for a lap or so, but perhaps doesn't look after the tyres all that well. Thankfully, not what we're seeing from Josh Martin. And although he's dropped back a little bit through this middle sector, he does look to have pace going into the final 5 minutes.
He does indeed, yeah, and to be fair, I think Scott Bugner is looking pretty sharp as well. Has Eric Axelson turned up the wick a little bit, do you reckon? All of a sudden, we've gone away from him. He did catch in that sort of second quarter of the race, shall we say, and after that, he sort of was a bit, okay, I'll just sit here, I'll see what's going on. A little bit of intel, maybe, that he's gathering on Carl Felvis. But all of a sudden, I don't know whether you think he's getting a little bit closer again. He was within half a second, and then over the start-finish line, actually gapped out to over 6/10 now again. So it's a little bit cat and mouse, I think, between the top two. I don't think either of them will be particularly bothered if they come first or second, to be honest. I thought Josh Martin was going to ruin every bit of complimenting that we've done over the course of this evening for him and go straight into the back of Scott Bugner. Luckily, he managed to avoid the sort of grey camouflage car and able to still make the corner, but that has meant he's dropped well off the pace.
That was very, very close. He came within a gnat's hat of hitting the back of Scott Bugner's car there going into the first corner, and that could so easily have spelled disaster. Funnily enough, just as we've been saying how smooth he is and how much he seems to be looking after the tyres, that car seems to have picked up a bit of understeer, doesn't it? He's not really making the apexes anymore, snatching the brakes going in. You can damage the tyres on Assetto Corsa by doing that kind of thing. You can damage your cars, meanwhile, by driving into each other, and that's what Paolo Tempera and Jens Verhoeven are trying to do. And Paolo Tempera defending 9th place here from Jens Verhoeven, who again gets into the back of him. This is proper touring car racing.
I was going to say, isn't this what we've tuned in to see? I don't know what the rest of the front are doing, but it's not touring car racing, is it? Paolo Tempera getting, well, a little bit beaten up from the rear end here by Jens Verhoeven, who seems very keen to, I was about to say, get in the top 10. He's already in the top 10, isn't he? He wants that 9th place really badly. Has anybody told him that if he stays where he is, he'll actually be higher up for the reverse grid? That might actually work in his favour a little bit more? Potentially not. Or maybe he knows that and he just really desperate to try and get ahead of Paolo Tempera. To be fair, right, Andy, in any kind of racing, as you know, it doesn't matter what position you're racing for, you want to race hard and you want to enjoy it, don't you? So that's exactly what those two drivers, maybe not Paolo Tempera, potentially, but that's hopefully what they're doing.
I'm going to sound unkind when I say this, but racing drivers often lose all sense of logic once they actually get behind the wheel.
No.
A present company excluded, of course. But they often do get behind the wheel and immediately forget about the big picture. And they see a car in front of them and they want to see it behind them instead. And that, I think, is what's going on with Jens Verhoeven here. He's got a nice little slipstream there down the pit straight. But just, again, not quite close enough. And you see, in pushing the car under braking, he can't quite get it pulled up at this late stage of the race. It's not just the tyres that start to go off, the brakes start to go off. The car just in general isn't balanced in the way that it was 18 minutes ago, and that unfortunately can lead to a couple mistakes, and that's what we just saw there for Jens Verhoeven. At the moment, we have all 16 starters, he says hesitantly, yes, still running, so it would be Stuart Vickers and Kenny Press as it stands, who would start on that front row for race 2, and this is terrible news for the likes of Felvers and Axelsen, because yes, they're banking some good points in this first race, but it means their job in race 2 gets even harder the more people that finish race 1.
I'm not complaining. Are you complaining? I don't think anybody's complaining. It's, well, to potentially Julie Bradshaw and Adrian Felvers and others in the chat might not be so happy that that's the case, but to be honest, we're all here for it, and especially Rich Hayden. He'll be delighted if all 16 drivers actually manage to finish on the lead lap, because, of course, as a race organiser, that's exactly what he wants to see. Alok Iyengar, really strong in qualifying, and to be fair, in race 1, Andy, I'm not sure you got the stats in front of you, what his best finishing position in a race 1 is, but it has to be up there right now. He's clearly enjoying the Catalonia circuit. He's racing with Elliot Dalton-Ayres, who I believe has taken a race victory so far this season. Maybe he hasn't been able to consistently follow that up, but still 7th and 8th place is a good area to be fighting for Alok.
You're absolutely right. He's only had one top 10 finish all season. That was the reverse grid podium we mentioned at Portimao. His best race 1 result was a week ago, and that was 12th. So he's almost doing twice as well as that in this race. In fact, if he could get a couple more, he would be. So yeah, 8th place for Alok is a really good effort. The F1000 driver races single-seaters in the real world, but clearly seems to be gelling pretty well with this front-wheel drive tin top of the Honda Civic Type R, just slightly wide of the apex there through turn 1. This little train of Hondas we've got here, you've got Dalton-Ayres 7th, Iyengar 8th, Tempera 9th, and Jens Verhoeven 10th. I think they're the only 4 in the grid, and they've all found themselves right in the middle of it. Again, to reiterate, the cars are all identical in performance, but it is funny how those Hondas have sort of found each other in the middle of the pack.
Yeah, I think someone at the marketing team at Honda decided that they want to shoot a little commercial or something, haven't they? They put them all together to try and get the best shot possible. It is a bit weird, isn't it? But to be fair, it's a damn good-looking car, but you're right, it is no more powerful or less powerful than any of the drivers up ahead or any of the cars behind. But it just goes to show that sometimes it is just a bit odd how the drivers, very similar drivers, pick very similar cars, and some of the cars like the Alfa Romeo we haven't seen it towards the top end very much at all, apart from Andy Carroll taking a victory at the Norris Ring. So they clearly can take victories. The cars are pretty equal, as Carl Felvers was saying in the interview. It just so happens that the quickest drivers pick a certain type of car quite often.
Yeah, absolutely, and there will be some slight handling characteristics that are different just in the body shapes of the car, where the weight is distributed. It's slightly different on a Hyundai than it would be on a Honda, but yeah, you're right, it is a very evenly matched field, and that's why we're having the most competitive championship we've had for ages. What we want to have, though, is a checkered flag, because the time has ticked down to 0. Kyle Felvers has seen off the challenge from Eric Axelsen, and it will be for Kyle Felvers a 3rd victory of the season, matching his big championship rival Nicky Taylor for race wins, and potentially moving him back to the top of the points. Axelsen 2nd, Scott Bugner driving well there to fend off Josh Martin for 3rd. Martin was 4th ahead of Joel Lasker. Nicky Taylor disappointed, I think, with a fairly lonely run there to 6th place after that lap 1 contact. Elliot Dalton-Ayres, Alok Iyengar, Paolo Tempera, Pera, and Jens Verhoeven will round out the top 10 ahead of Andy Dorman, Andy Carroll. Ethan Hill there goes across the line in his Cataclean liveried, or in fact it's Demon Tweaks liveried Honda. Then it is John Jones, who we're seeing now. We're into the group of cars that had problems in that race. Remember, Jones and Kenny Press tangled in the early stages. Stuart Vickers also fading to the back of the field, but they will be the top 3 cars on the grid for that second race a little bit later on. So we'll get these 3 running in Class B, essentially, for those that did not have quite such a clean race, get them across the line, and then we will head into a very, very short break before we hear from our podium finishers from race number 1. And begin the build-up to what could be a very, very exciting second race. That first race was reasonably tame, but I haven't got a huge amount of hope that that's going to continue into race number 2. Vickers across the line then. We'll be back in a few minutes' time with all of the post-race 1 reaction. Welcome back, everyone, to the virtual Circuit de Catalunya in Barcelona. Race number 1 for our VRRC Touring Car Championship's just been completed, and it was a 3rd victory of the season for Kyle Felvers, who converts pole position to a race win for the 2nd time. And again, he did it last in Portugal. Well, we're just over the border into Spain this week. And Kyle, you're continuing your winning ways. And that really, after last week, was an important win, wasn't it?
Yeah, after last week, obviously got a penalty, so that dropped me down in the championship more. And that was definitely needed after last week's performance. Obviously, it just wasn't my week last week, but this week I seem to be doing quite well.
Certainly, yeah, pole position, and you dashed off into, I think, about a 1.4 second lead on the first lap as other people were sort of holding each other up behind. Eric did then bring that gap right down, but how much of that was a pace advantage over you, and how much of that was you perhaps managing the tyres? Because it did seem that you had an answer for him then in the final 10 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of was just keeping it chill. Eric did have unbelievable pace, though. I think I was doing around about 55.8. Eric must have been doing 55.4s, 55.5s. He was gaining every time, but I sort of had the edge when it came into the final sector, and that helped me going down onto the run towards turn 1. And then, yeah, I sort of just stopped looking in my mirrors as much and tried to put down some solid laps and started increasing the distance.
And you were able to keep him at arm's length then until the end of the race. Of course, this time in race 2, your job becomes rather different. Your dad's already warning you through the YouTube chat to keep your eyes peeled for turn 1 mayhem. It's a wide track, isn't it? But such a long run down into that first corner. What is the game plan for the first 30 seconds or so of this second race?
I don't know if we get down to the line within 30 seconds, do we? I think it would just be keep it chill, wait for people to make mistakes. As you saw in that first race, people were it was very bunched up, so try to capitalize on all of that, I guess.
Excellent. That sounds like a plan. We'll see how well you're able to carry that out in a few minutes' time. But Carl, congratulations. A really, really good 3rd win of the season.
Thanks, Andy.
Carl Felvers then, your race winner. We mentioned the Swedish assassin a few times in that interview, and he is now about to catch up with Jack Oliphant.
Yes, Eric, it's well, Carl's already done half my analysis. You were extremely quick there, but there wasn't anything to sort of bite on. Talk us through the race from your perspective.
Well, I wasn't too happy with the start. I didn't got off the line as fast as Kyle, so yeah, a little after in the start, and then the first 2-3 laps, I felt that I was really quick, and I was closing up the gap, and then like after 10 minutes, it kind of switched. I struggled instead. I don't know. I never got in striking distance of Kyle. I lost out like out of the chicane every lap, and yeah, never had a chance to strike.
With a little bit of contemplation, do you reckon there's something that Carl was doing that you sort of want to include into your race, going into race 2, into your lap potentially? And obviously, when you're actually in the heat of battle, it's a little bit difficult to adjust your driving style. But can you think now, is there anything that he was doing that you might be able to learn from?
Well, to be honest, I think I have the pace. I just need to, I don't know, focus. And but Kyle was so fast, he didn't do any mistakes, and then it's not much you can do, you know. So, yeah.
Wow, good stuff. I won't ask you about what your plan is for race number 2, because I imagine it's the same that it always is, which is keep it calm, keep it composed, and take advantage of any situations. Good luck for race number 2, Eric.
Thank you, Jack.
Excellent stuff from Eric Axelson. Then back at the front of the field where he belongs. It was also a strong run there from Scott Bugner, who joins us now. Scott finished 3rd in that race, and Scott, it wasn't the best qualifying session for you, and you've had a bit of a struggle the last couple of rounds, but you proved on the first lap there that if you're given a sniff of a chance to gain ground, you're going to.
You just got to go for it. I think it's one of them things, you know, I'm trying to just sort of figure out race 2. That's been my sort of my lucky points this season, where I've been able to get through the field. But, you know, 3rd place, you know, it was a nice sort of calm race until I saw a big gain in Josh into turn 1, and I thought it was all over. I thought Joel was coming behind me again. But yeah, it was all good. It was a good race, nice and clean and quite calm.
Circuit strikes me as quite similar to Portimao, where we started the championship. Of course, that week you had a 4th in race 1. You won the reversed grid race. Is it these kind of medium, high-speed, long-flowing corners that you really enjoy?
Yeah, I do like this circuit, but it feels like for me that the Hyundai is it doesn't like the change of direction, like quick direction. So at least here you've got some quite long flowing corners, so it sort of feels a little bit nice, a bit more stable.
Excellent. Well, fingers crossed you can continue that stability into the reverse grid race. Best of luck, Scott.
Thank you.
So we'll let Scott go, because we are less than a minute away now from launching into our reverse grid race, and this really is important now. That first race, Jack, everyone was being far too polite for my liking, but with all of these championship contenders getting closer and closer in the points with every race, starting at the back of the grid for this one, I think we're in for a show.
Yeah, you can only assume there's going to be fireworks, can't you? It's we're starting to almost get towards the penultimate round that you promised us at the beginning of this evening's broadcast, and I think that's when people start to, you know, expect a little bit more drama, expect a little bit more sort of pressure to be applied. You know, all of a sudden the rounds have got labels, you know, and you've got a countdown on. It's like the countdown to Christmas. People actually start waking up as soon as you get into this sort of work holidays. But we'll have to wait and see whether they build that up and create fireworks tonight.
Yes, Christmas less than 2 weeks away. Don't remind me. I'm far more excited about the next 20 minutes of racing here at the VRRC. On the right, Stuart Vickers. On the left, Kenny Press. The lights go out. And for the second time tonight, we're away and racing here at Barcelona. Decent start, it seems, from Vickers. The Cupra will hold the advantage on the run towards turn 1. But look at Ethan Hill in the Honda, looking up the inside of everybody. They're at least 3, nearly 4 wide. They're banging doors. That is not going to end well. Straight on into the lead goes Kenny Press. He actually gets the car stopped. Andy Dorman is sideways up the curb. Hold your breath through the left-hander at turn 2. Ethan Hill going for the lead, and Dorman is sideways. Oh, and right in front of there is carnage through turn 3, and that surely has caught some championship contenders. Bugner drops to the back of the field. Axelson, but losing ground as well. That, I'm sure, will have championship implications. It looks as though they've all got through it more or less in one piece, but that will have shuffled the pack in, and there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, definitely shuffled the pack, but I don't actually think it's really stricken any of our championship leaders down, to be honest. As we get the virtual safety car, that was always going to happen, I think, after that little bit of you can see that, couldn't you, Andy? In the second apex, as soon as there was that little bit of contact with Andy Dorman, you just thought, okay, this is going to be a safety car. So, luckily, I think we've avoided major damage to most of the cars, and this will just be a case of trying to get everybody back into a nice little pack, so we sort of negates the big disadvantage that some people would have happened to them. after being basically a victim in a bigger incident. Ethan Hill, though, topping. I was just trying to figure out if we actually saw whether we saw how he got past Kenny Press, because Kenny absolutely launched it into the first corner, didn't he? And amazingly still held it onto the circuit.
Well, I think it was that launching into turn 1 that rather compromised his second corner, and so coming off turn 2, I think I spotted, ahead of all of the carnage, that Ethan Hill got up the inside of him into turn 3, and indeed Lewis Edwards is confirming that is what happened. So Kenny Press may have got into the first corner first, but was carrying a little bit too much speed. Championship-wise, Taylor 5th, Martin 6th, Felvers 8th, Buckner 9th, Axelson 11th. And if you want to throw John Lask into the picture, he was the big loser, if you like, because he's down in 13th position, but they all still have some ground to make up. The fact we've got Taylor and Martin together is particularly interesting, running 5th and 6th. That could be the point to watch for, because they're really the first two drivers making big moves towards the front. The VRRC is ending at the end of this lap. It's down to Ethan Hill, upon the resumption of the race, to decide exactly when and how he accelerates, and I would imagine, Jack, he'll do that sometime coming through or out of this chicane.
Yeah, I would imagine as he hits the halfway through, he'd start to put his foot down, hopefully not understeer off the circuit with those cold tyres. Remember, the tyres haven't really been able to get back up to temperature, and that's exactly what he does, and he gets a really good jump on Kenny Press, who in turn gets a half-decent start on Stuart Vickers, and after that, everybody is queuing up for a lunge into turn 1, aren't they? Really good start by Ethan. What can the rest of them do? Remember, Ethan hasn't had much luck at all this championship in terms of hardware issues. Let's see if he can hold on to this race lead as Elliot Dalton-Ayres goes for the move on Stuart Vickers. I think he's got this done and dusted early doors, a little bit further in the background as well. Oh, there goes Nicky Taylor through on Stuart Vickers as well. Well, Stuart just decided he didn't want to take the apex as Josh Martin goes through on him as well.
Indeed, and Carl Felvers was trying to get up the inside there of Paolo Tempera, and I think got boxed in behind Vickers. He's got Josh Martin ahead of him, but Scott Bugner right behind, and Felvers goes up the middle of both of them. Tempera on the outside. On the inside, a struggling Stuart Vickers. This is nervous stuff for Kyle Felvers. Gets leaned on slightly by Tempera, but actually comes out of that with 6th position. Bugner is ahead of Vickers too, and Scott Bugner really needs to try and go with Felvers. Is Tempera back up the inside? He is. This is not going according to plan for Kyle Felvers. He's back down into 7th position, and Paolo Tempera, as he's every right to do, is putting up a real fight. So now Carl Felvers suddenly becoming, along with Bugner, a bit detached from the others. Up the inside goes Bugner, though. That's a really aggressive move. They might have lent on each other, and Scott goes through. An aggressive move, that from Scott Bugner, but I think a clean one.
Yeah, I can imagine half of our YouTube chat are watching this from behind their hands, to be honest, of behind the sofa probably more than anything else, because Kyle is really in amongst the battle in here, and we've already seen last race that Paolo Tempera doesn't mind giving it as much as he can take as well. So yeah, you're absolutely right. He doesn't need to back out of it at all. Nicky Taylor and Josh Martin, they were going side by side. That's for 4th position. Josh Martin has his nose ahead for the time being, as Eric Axelson is now on the back of Carl Felvers. There is the battle for 4th as they go down towards the chicane. Ethan Hill still leads. Kenny Press ahead of Elliot Dalton-Ayres, holding them up somewhat, I would say, the front two. Elliot will be hoping to get through quicker than the likes of Josh Martin can follow him, because, of course, the quicker Elliot can get through, the better chance he has at putting a little bit of a gap. He's not quite got the ultimate pace of a few of the other drivers that are currently sat on his backside, but as Elliot Dalton-Ayres goes to the inside of Kenny Press, who has every right to try and defend this position, but it doesn't look like, Andy, he's going to try too hard.
No, Josh Martin was, though. That was a heck of a lunge that he just made on Nicky Taylor, and that is Scott Bugner, last of the late breakers, up to the inside, and indeed into the side of Paolo Tempera, who gives him one back coming off turn 2. Meanwhile, Felvers and Axelson are at play again, whilst Josh Martin, I think, just tangled with the Alfa Romeo of Kenny Press. He's slow off turn number 3, and Nicky Taylor draws alongside him. Inside line for Martin, outside line for Nicky Taylor. Martin late on the brake, crashes into the side of Press again. He just cannot find a way cleanly past the Alfa Romeo, and it could be about to cost him some places.
Yeah, it could be about to cost him some penalty points as well, to be honest. That looked like a big hit. I don't think he was making that apex at all. They're almost going 3 or 4 wide as Tempera leans on Scott Bugner to force him out wide. Axelson and Carl Felvers, so quite often interview them after the races, like we did after race 1. They're always complimentary of each other's driving. Will that continue after this particular race? They try and not only fend off each other, but carve their way through a pack that certainly hasn't got any ambition of keeping it clean by the looks of it. Proper touring car racing. shall we say, from the rest of the pack. Ethan Hill still leads, but Elliot Dalton is piling on the pressure. Nicky Taylor with a little bit of a gap as Josh Martin struggles to get past Kenny Press into the hairpin of turn number 10, though he has managed to get through. Paolo Tempera maybe hung out to dry on the outside by Carl Felvers to go 3 wide through the chicane that no one likes in motorsport. Paolo Tempera holds on to that position as Eric Axelson gets nudged out the way by Kenny Press.
It is all going on, and as I said, all of this has championship significance because this is full of the front runners in the points. Bit of a mistake there, I think, for Ethan Hill. He's got Dalton Ayres on his tail now, with the demise slightly of Kenny Press. So we've got a battle for the lead going on, and then behind them, battling amongst championship front runners. Onto the pit straight we head to complete another lap. 13.25 minutes to go, and they're side by side for the race lead. Elliot Dalton Ayres with 2 wheels on the grass going past the pits, but he's bought himself a ticket to the inside line, and I think he'll be later on the brakes than Ethan Hill. Elliot Dalton Ayres to the lead through the first corner, and for Dalton Ayres, who has had 2 second-placed finishes of this season, might be about to get another one because he's just left the door wide open for Ethan Hill, who will now try and get the lead back. This is a brilliant battle between the 2 Hondas. They're banging doors heading towards turn 4, but all the while, Nicky Taylor starts to get closer to them.
Yeah, and that's exactly the problem they're going to have as Elliot Dalton Ayres tries to switch back to get back up the inside, but the problem is, like we've said so many times in race number 1, that's going to leave him the outside line going into the next corner, so it doesn't matter how many times Elliot Dalton Ayres switches it up, he will always pretty much end up on the outside. It's going to be a little bit more difficult for him. Oh, unless he does that, and it's just sending Ethan Hill into a wall. Andy, I feel like I jumped the gun presuming exactly what happened then, but you get the impression that on a straight, which slightly turns left, you see a driver completely go into the wall on the right. You get the impression that's what's happened.
Indeed, I luckily actually was looking away at that precise moment to find out what Ethan Hill's best result of the season was. It doesn't really matter now, does it? Because he's out of the race with damage, it would seem. Right, what does that mean? It means that Dalton Ayres leads, Nicky Taylor is second, Josh Martin third, Scott Bugner fourth, Carl Felvers we saw going up the inside of Tempera for fifth. So it's Axelson really now who hasn't made the progress that he would like. Remember, he was elbowed wide at this part of the circuit a few laps ago and hasn't ever really seemed to recover. Meanwhile, Nicky Taylor and Josh Martin now coasting up onto the tail of Elliot Dalton Ayres. Nicky Taylor is 3 times a winner so far this season. Josh Martin hunting for his first. So this is a really important race. If Martin wants to be a genuine title contender, you feel he needs a race win, and this is one of his best opportunities to get one.
Yeah, he needs to keep it nice and clean. It was a little bit aggressive missing a braking zone earlier on against Kenny Press, remember, but crucially, Kenny Press managed to keep it going in a straight line, no harm, no foul, and all that sort of thing. So with any luck, he'll escape the penalty points from that particular incident, but he does need to be on his best behaviour now, I would say. Otherwise, he'll feel the wrath of Rich Hayden on the racing debrief. Nicky Taylor is all over the back of Elliot Dalton Ayres. And I have to say, I actually know Ethan Hill's, off the top of my head, I know Ethan Hill's best result, Andy, which is unusual for me. It was when he came into the commentary box and spent a lovely 10 minutes with me chatting away. That was his best evening so far this championship, I fear. And I'm sure he'll probably agree because it's been that bad a season for him. It's best of a bad bunch, I think, in terms of his most successful evening. But there we go. Hopefully he's not too sad about it this time round. And there's always next championship, which I think is probably the attitude he's going to have to take from this.
I was about to accuse you of making that up because I was looking at my stats and he hasn't had a podium, and I've of course forgot that he had spent some time in the box not doing an interview but helping you call one of the races. So yeah, I think you're right, that may well have been his highlight of the season, which really tells you everything you need to know about his season. Right, and towards turn number 10 they go. Elliot Dalton Ayres has got Nicky Taylor right on his rear bumper, and he knows it, look, because he turns in that little bit earlier to turn 10. He does not want to leave that inside line open for Nicky, and Taylor is in a really difficult position as well here because he's got cars queuing up behind him, including Josh Martin, who is one of his big championship contenders, as we've said. So this now, Jack, has the feeling of what I like to call a bit of a pressure cooker race. You've got Elliot Dalton Ayres in the lead with absolutely nothing to lose and a whole queue of cars behind him who are fighting for the championship. This could get quite cagey as we head into the second half of the race.
Yeah, and no disrespect to the likes of Andy Carroll or John Jones or Kenny Press, but quite often when we see those drivers at the front of a race number 2, there is a massive disparity between the pace of the likes of Nicky Taylor and those drivers, whereas Elliot Dalton Ayres is sort of, pace-wise, on the back of the front pack, if that makes sense. He's maybe at 3 or 4 tenths off the ultimate pace of the other drivers, but that's not really enough for the other drivers just to coast up to the back of him and get around him easily. So he's going to be a headache. He's going to be a thorn in the side of a lot of these drivers, and I fear that we're going to have a little, well, not fear, I'm actually quite looking forward to it, but that we're going to have a bit of a bunching up, and that's going to create some desperate moves from a few of the championship contenders, is whether or not who can keep their head the best and maybe just think, you know what, this one isn't the race for me. I'm going to score the points. And some others, like you said, from your lofty commentary position, judging the drivers earlier on, Andy, saying that all logic goes out the window. And I believe you're absolutely right, to be honest. Having been in both situations, you're absolutely right. You don't think at all when you're behind the wheel. You just go.
I must stress, I say that from personal experience as well, because I'm just as bad when I'm competing, honestly. In fact, worse. You should hear me on Discord during a race. Right, down towards turn 10 they go. Nicky Taylor, a bit closer perhaps this time than he was a lap ago, but again, Dalton Ayres knows it, pulls to the middle of the road. He's defending well, isn't he? And only really defending into the places where he really has to, where he really feels under threat, but not overly defending through some of the faster corners. Those are the corners where you don't want to be going offline, because you're going to leave so much on the table momentum-wise coming off the corner, but things just, for the time being, remaining a little bit more static, aren't they? Dalton Ayres, Nicky Taylor and Josh Martin nose to tail, but until a mistake comes from one of those three drivers, I don't think we're likely to see a big shuffle in the order. Out through the final corner they go once again, and Dalton Ayres, comes off that chicane really well. I forget who it was that mentioned it. I think it might have been Axelson in his race 1 interview, but he was saying that Kyle Felvers was so good off that chicane, and that, I would say, it's maybe not the most exhilarating of corners to drive, Jack, but it might just be the most important one on the track because it gives you that run onto the long pit straight.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. As he tries to go around the outside of Scott Bugner, finish the point off in a minute. Scott Bugner holds on to that apex for turn number 2. And I will very quickly do a public apology to Elliot Dalton Ayres. Apparently, Ethan Hill's wheelbase disconnected, and that's what sent him cascading into the right-hand side of the circuit and making him stage exit left, basically. So I do apologise from our camera angles. I very quickly assumed wrongly, that it was Elliot Dalton Ayres' fault, but I'm absolutely incorrect.
That's a rare thing to hear a commentator admit they're wrong. I've been caught on record saying that, so rather you than me. Yes, it was difficult to tell from this angle, though, in fairness, but that's a shame to hear because Ethan has been plagued with these kind of problems all season long. He's a very, very talented driver, as we've seen, any time that his hardware's allowed him to really fight at the front of the field. Right, this is a significant battle then. We saw it at the start of the lap with Kyle Felvers trying to go around the outside of Scott Bugner for 4th position. He wasn't able to do it, but again, this is significant for the championship, but in typical VRRC fashion, we have to cut away from that because there's an even better battle going on for the race lead. Nicky Taylor fully alongside Dalton Ayres this time into turn 10. He's on the outside line. That wasn't going to work. The same is true of Felvers in the background, but now Nicky Taylor really starting to turn the screws. He wants this 4th win of the season.
Yeah, I think he's getting a little bit worried of Josh Martin in the background. He just seems to be waiting and biding his time, doesn't he, to see if there's going to be a mistake from either of the drivers up ahead. I think he knows exactly what you were talking about before, how Elliot Dalton Ayres doesn't have anything to worry about. He doesn't have anything to lose here. He just wants to drive. He wants to take this victory. He wants to hold off to the attacks of the championship front runners, of course. So it's going to be very interesting. That battle for 4th and 5th, though, that's meant that dropped off the top 3. So I think Josh Martin is getting a little bit more aggressive. You can see Nicky Taylor, that's not an aggressive move to the inside. I think it's a slightly defensive one as Josh Martin trying to get into the slipstream, tries to go around the outside. It's going to be a very brave move here. We saw him do it at the Nürburgring, and I think we might see him do it again here. He's going to nudge Nicky Taylor out of the way, but like we've seen so often, it's going to offer the inside of the circuit back to him. But Josh Martin has managed to make it stick. 2nd place goes his way.
Wow, is all I can say to that. How on earth did he get that car pulled up? Yes, he was on the racing line, but to go round the outside of anyone there is difficult. To do it against Nicky Taylor, well, I wouldn't fancy my chances, let's put it that way. Brilliant driving by Josh Martin, and now he's into 2nd place. He can sniff that first victory. It is 1 overtake away. Kyle Felvers and Scott Bugner leaning on each other again. And again, these two both fighting for the championship. At the top of the points, these two are at the moment. And they are neck and neck, heading through the dip into the left-hander. And Felvers is going to try and make this stick, but of course Bugner's going to try and hang tough around the outside, which he does. Finds himself all over the curbs, but finds himself, more importantly, still in 4th place as they head towards Camsa Corner at turn number 9. Paolo Tempera right in behind them. So you've got 2 groups of 3 now. 3 fighting for the lead, 3 fighting for 4th, and actually 3 behind as well. Axelson, Lask and Dorman, who are just as close together.
Yeah, and I think you've both of these, you've got a spanner in the works, haven't you, really? Because Paolo Tempera doesn't have anything to lose, and neither does Elliot Dalton-Ayres. And all of a sudden, Eric Axelsson joins in on the party, and it's getting really rather crowded, isn't it, in this battle particularly? I thought Tempera was going to lunge one at the inside of Kyle Felvers, but it wasn't to be for the time being. So, can Josh Martin do what Nicky Taylor couldn't, which is overtake Elliot Dalton-Ayres within a couple of laps? Because that's all he's got left, isn't he? Less than 4 minutes to go, Andy. That must mean we're going on to pretty much the penultimate lap.
Yeah, this will be the penultimate lap. Lap times around the 155-56 bracket, aren't they? Oh, Felvers has had a really good exit from the final turn. We know he's good off that chicane, and he's proven it again, closing right in on Scott Bugner, who drives down the white line on the right-hand side of the road. There's no way that he's leaving a gap on the inside line. Meanwhile, Eric Axelsson, look, he's up the inside of Paolo Tempera as well. So 2 attempted overtakes going on. Felvers's will be unsuccessful, and actually, so might Axelson's, because Tempera's not going to roll over and let him go. They almost bang doors through turn 2, and they still have a slight overlap heading to this never-ending right-hander at turn number 3. Bugner is really having to drive defensively, but he's doing so really effectively, not leaving a gap on the inside for Kyle Felvers, and this will be frustrating. Kyle, no end. Axelsson up the inside of Tempera. What a race, Jack.
Yeah, fantastic, isn't it, really? It's what we actually want to see from a race number 2. We don't love seeing massive carnage, but we do love seeing moves like that. And Tempera launches one at the inside of Eric Axelsson. I don't think he actually really meant to go that far up his inside, but he was dedicated. I'll give him that. He was ambitious. Not sure if it's going to work, though. He's still there in all fairness, holding onto the brakes to just try and keep it on the circuit and out the gravel trap. And as Eric Axelsson goes up towards T9, it's going to be around the outside. It's going to be a difficult one to pull off this. He's going to have the inside for turn number 10, which is exactly where you want to be. Carl Felvers doesn't have the inside for turn number 10. But again, it's going to be difficult to try and maybe get a cut back. But Eric Axelsson is certainly worried not only about Paolo Tempera, but about Joel Lask and Andy Dorman, who's come back. Remember, Andy Dorman was one of the causes for that virtual safety car at the beginning of the race. Oh, I thought there was going to be a lunge there, but there's going to be one here instead. Actually, Carl Felvers managed to get past on Scott Bugner. I'm not entirely sure how he's actually stayed there as the top 3 go through our vision.
I think he went round the outside again. That seems to be the way to pass, doesn't it, tonight? Round the outside, rather than the traditional launch up the inside under braking. So Felvers finally breaks through the defences of Scott Bugner to go 4th. Eric Axelsson and Joel Lask, both ahead of Paolo Tempera, now 6th and 7th, whilst the leaders stay in the same order. But it's very close, and Josh Martin is alongside Elliot Dalton-Ayres going towards the first corner. They are neck for the race lead. Has Martin got the inside or the outside? It's the outside, but we know that doesn't really faze him. Dalton-Ayres is never going to leave him space, though. Josh Martin forced off the track, rejoins right behind him, and now has to turn from attack to defence because Nicky Taylor is right there. This is the final lap of the race, and any one of these 3 drivers could still claim the race win.
Yeah, and important because they could claim the championship lead, I believe, as well. I think Josh Martin may be struggling slightly more than Nicky Taylor, but it still could be significant as they go into those final couple of rounds. And, of course, off to Imola next week as Elliot Dalton-Ayres gets a little bit of a nudge from the backside of what is probably now a desperate Josh Martin, who goes wide on the braking zone, and that allows a little bit of a space up the inside for Nicky Taylor. No, he doesn't take advantage of it. Elliot Dalton-Ayres has found himself with half a second gap, Andy. Will he have the composure to see that one out for the second half of this lap?
Speaking of composure, how does Josh Martin have the composure to go back after him again? He lost hardly anything in that. I don't think that was self-inflicted. Don't quote me on it, but I think there was a slight bump from Nicky Taylor going into the braking zone that slightly sent Josh Martin out wide, and that might just have won the race for Elliot Dalton-Ayres, because going into the last of the real overtaking opportunities, Martin isn't quite close enough. He's closing in under braking, but really it's more important for him to keep Taylor behind than it is to get ahead of Elliot Dalton-Ayres. Elliot Dalton-Ayres, who has had a bit of a rough season, it must be said. He's had a couple of podium finishes, 2 runner-up spots at the Norris Ring a couple of weeks ago. He now is just 3 turns away from claiming his first victory of the season in the VRRC Touring Car Championship, but he gets too much of the curb going into the chicane. Martin, though, gets too much coming out of it. It will be a drag race to the line. Who comes off the final corner fastest? It looks as though Elliot Dalton-Ayres, by the skin of his teeth, is going to do enough. He crosses the line and wins the second race here at Barcelona. That was an absolute thriller. Dalton-Ayres the winner, Martin second, Nicky Taylor in third. What a race.
Yeah, brilliant stuff, wasn't it, from everyone, really? And even though we did have 3 DNFs, he didn't really feel like you saw that many big incidents. Unfortunately, Ethan Hills was a technical issue. Remember, his wheel disconnected, so we can't have that one sort of counting. But Shuvik as Alok Iyengar, unfortunately, having potentially been caught up in that incident at the beginning of the race, but the rest of it was absolutely fantastic. Eric Axelsen maybe not moving his way up the order as much as he was hoping for, but he finishes in 6th place. Again, not the end of the world for a championship battle. But we'll review everything and talk to the drivers in the top 3 as well after this short advert.
Well, welcome back everyone to the VRRC Touring Car Championship. We've just about got our heart rates down to a reasonable level after what was a fantastic second race here at Barcelona. The reversed grid races always throw up a bit of a surprise, some really good racing, well, this one provided all of the above, and it gave us a new race winner, at least in this season, in Elliot Dalton Ayres. Elliot joins us now in the commentary box. What a drive that was. Sometimes winning the reverse grid races can be perhaps not treated with the same esteem as winning, from the front of the grid in race 1, but the defensive drive you had to put in to stay at the front there, you really earned that one.
Yeah, thank you. It was quite a big defensive drive. I mean, I got past Ethan after his wheel disconnected, and realised that Nicky and Josh were right up my bumper, and I was like, I know they're much quicker than me. I'm just gonna have to try and defend this to the line, and somehow I managed to do it.
Talk us through the battle you had with Ethan there, because you made what looked like a really good move into turn 1, taking to the grass to do so, going down the pit straight, but then he just didn't let you have it without a fight, did he?
No, he really did. I mean, yeah, like you said, down on the grass, and I thought, right, I've got him. I can just try and get away, and then he's back up my inside, and I was like, oh no, this is going to slow us right down up to the pack behind. But then, like I say, his wheel disconnected, and I kind of went straight into the back of him. But guess that's kind of racing.
Yeah, absolutely. We can't lay any fault at your door for that one, I don't think. After that, obviously, as we said, you had this incredible defensive drive at the front, but not defending from any old drivers. You were defending from drivers who themselves were fighting each other and are fighting each other for the championship lead. How conscious were you of that? Because we were speculating during the race that those drivers perhaps were not wanting to take too many risks with you since you had nothing to lose.
Yeah, I guess so. I knew that they were much quicker than me, so just defending all the way. But I got a few opportunities, but I managed to fend them off and get across the line to take first.
Well, that you did, Elliot. Fantastic to have a new name in the winner's circle, at least as far as the Touring Car Championship's concerned. Fingers crossed for you. You can continue this now through the final 2 weeks.
Thank you, Andy.
Elliot Dalton Ayres is your reverse grid winner here at Barcelona, but my word, Jack, wasn't it a close run to the finish?
It absolutely was, and I believe I can talk to our second place driver, Josh Martin. Josh, that was one hell of a race for, well, actually one hell of an evening from you, really. I bet you're probably the sweatiest driver on the grid right now.
Hey, I gave it my best go. couldn't quite get Elliot at the end. Like he placed his car in like all the right places. I couldn't do anything. I did try.
I was going to say, you certainly tried going into that first or second corner, I believe. You ended up off the road, you were lunging in so much, weren't you? Trying to get late on the brakes there. Were you absolutely desperate for that race win? You couldn't think in your head, maybe I'll just take second place, that's good enough for me? Or were you desperate for that top step?
Yes and no. To be honest, I wasn't really thinking points. I was just trying to win, being so close. And no, I got my braking point spot on around turn 1, but where Elliot placed his car, like I couldn't do anything. Being obviously on the outside, he was on the inside, so it was his corner. So I had to back out of it, or I'd have driven into the side of him. So no, he just placed his car in the perfect place.
Well, talk us through a move that was a couple of laps earlier to take that second place off a driver who we're going to hear from in a couple of minutes' time. That move on Nicky Taylor around the outside of turn 1. I mean, it's brave, it's ambitious, but did you really think that was going to come off?
Yeah, I seem to be making a common theme of around the outside
You
moves
do?
in this championship. I know I did overtake Nicky earlier on in the race. Well, that might have been the race before. I don't remember. But I was in front of him anyway, and then I had a little bit of a messy pass on Kenny, so lost the position again. Then yeah, I was behind Nicky then for quite a while. I was almost just wanted him and Elliot to fight, and I wanted to just come and pick the pieces up. So I was quite happy sat behind Nicky, and then I got that lap as a bit closer. My initial plan was to bump draft Nicky to gain that bit on Elliot, and then he defended, and it's like, oh, okay, then I'll get around the outside. So yeah, just broke at my normal point. Nicky left me the space, and yeah, we were through.
Don't you hate it when the your rival drivers don't do exactly what you want them to do when you're out there on circuit? It's really annoying, isn't it? But yeah, no, great moves, great entertainment, Josh. Big moves in the championship as well. It's starting to get to that crunch time, isn't it? You must be. I know we ask it every single week, but it must be in the back of your mind now about it.
Yeah, see, this round was the round I thought was going to be my weaker round out the last 3. So yeah, to get a 4th in race 1, I was really happy with, and then to be battling for a podium and the win in race 2, and then coming away with a 2nd. I think a 2nd and a 4th is a good haul of points compared to I guess the people around me in the championship.
Yeah, absolutely. It's well, the championship amazingly has got even tighter, but we'll bring you all up to date with that in a couple of minutes' time. Well done on the 2nd place, Josh. Very well done on the evening as well.
Cheers. I'll see you lot next week.
Looking forward to it. Congratulations to Josh Martin, who, as he said, did manage to make that excellent overtake around the outside of the next man that we're going to talk to, Nicky Taylor. Nicky, your perspective on that battle there, it was a race that you could easily have won, but also a race that you could easily have ended up finishing well off the podium. It was so tight. How satisfied are you to at least get a podium out of it?
Yeah, after race 1 was a bit iffy for me. Getting a podium was kind of just my sole objective for that one, and I'd done that. And had I known Josh wanted to bump draft, I would have done it. But I thought he was going to go for the overtake because he had so much overspeed. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll defend this. And then I got a bit forced out wide. But at the end of the day, it's the nature of the corner, and he hit the curb, so it is what it is. But I couldn't get past Elliot. No matter what I tried or wherever I went, his car was just literally in the perfect place at the perfect time. So I couldn't do anything. But yeah, kind of managed to get through the pack at the start, and then like collected yens in the smoke. So I literally could not see a thing going into the turn 3, and I was literally just driving blind trying to go through. But yeah, that was all right. And then just a bummer for Ethan really with his wheel, but hopefully he can get that sorted for next round, and yeah, and we can have HFT actually for all 3 of us at the top, and hopefully Jens can come through as well.
Yeah, certainly, because actually you and Kyle could do with as much help as possible. We're going to be showing everybody the updated championship points in a moment or two, but needless to say, it is incredibly tight between you two at the top. The chances of a HFT driver ordinarily at this point would be winning the championship would be pretty high, but it's just so competitive this time around, isn't it? There are still 5 of you under a blanket.
Yeah, I mean, you say it could be either of us two. I've just looked at the points as well, and it's the Josh, Scott, and Eric all on 181, and I'm on like 187, and Carl's on 189. So it could literally go. If I say have a really bad round at Imola, then it could go. Or if like Eric has a great round, then it can go either way. So there's still a lot of points left to gain, and there's a lot of points to lose. So hopefully I get a better round at Imola where I don't have to worry about like championship too much at Brands. But at the end of the day, I just come away and hope as long as I get top 3 in the championship and get a prize, then I'm not too fussed. But yeah, I'll always go for the championship win, and Kyle will always go as well. So it's going to be tough, but I think I've got a little bit of an edge from, and I think me and Eric have got a little bit of the edge currently from winning previous championships. So it should be fun.
That's an interesting perspective. I hadn't thought of it that way, but yeah, you're absolutely right. Nikki, congratulations on the podium. I'm sure we'll be speaking to you again next week.
Thank you. Hopefully.
So they are our podium finishers. Ever the professional, I did forget to mention whilst we had him here in the commentary box that Elliot Dalton-Ayres, we've also voted upon as the driver of the round for that incredible defensive drive in race number 2. And Jack, I think that is a fair decision to make. That was a really, really impressive drive on a night, actually, of pretty impressive drives.
Absolutely, yeah, and I mean, we heard Josh's interview, didn't we? That Elliot put the car exactly where he didn't want it. He didn't want it to be placed, and it was fantastic defensive drive. And you've done a good job when you've annoyed the rest of your opponents as well, even though you don't have the overall pace. So we always like to give the driver of the round to someone who does something a little bit special, who sort of piques our attention in other ways, not necessarily the one who scored the most points or anything like that, like we always say. So yeah, well done to Elliot Dalton-Ayres.
Indeed so. Right then, we've had a slight spoiler alert from Nikki Taylor
big time.
about what the points are, but we'll try and now drum up a bit more excitement about it, because look at that. There are 4 races to go, 2 at Imola, 2 at Brands Hatch. The top 5 in the championship are covered by 8 points. That is incredible. 189 for Carl Felvers. 2 points further back is Nikki Taylor. And look, he's had those 2 points penalties. Had it not been for that, he would have been joint championship leader. Scott Bugner is then a further 6 back in 3rd. So too, Eric Axelson and Josh Martin. I think we can probably count the rest of them out, if not mathematically, then realistically it is down to those top 5 now, with Jack Smith having, of course, dropped back because he missed tonight's 2 races. Outside of the championship equation, though, kudos to Elliot Dalton-Ayres. That win bumping him up several spots now into 6th position, ahead of Chol Lask, actually, who many of us tipped to be one of the championship favourites coming into this season. It just hasn't quite worked out in his favour. Andy Dorman, Jack Smith, Andy Carroll completing the top 10 in the championship standings. I kind of want to just jump straight into the Imola races now. I want to binge watch the end of this season, Jack, because this is setting up to be by far the closest finish we've had to a championship, at least as long as I've been involved with the VRRC.
It's one hell of an ending, isn't it, really? And we hope that obviously Imola provides us with exactly the same amount of excitement, and obviously leaves us, I would say, with a similar points margin. If we can go into the last round of the championship with 5 people being on less than 10 points from the championship, that would be absolutely incredible. And I believe we do also have our very own Alan Gow alongside us in the commentary box at the moment, actually, to talk a little bit about how, 1, he's weaved all this concoction together for us, and 2, about what he's got lined up for us next. Is that true, Rich?
I don't know whether to take that as a compliment or an insult.
Hey, say what you want about the BTCC. It's one hell of a show.
So going back to last week, Andy, when you said whoever wrote the script needs a pay rise, do I get another one this week?
I think you're earning enough, Rich, quite frankly.
Oh, God, okay. Yeah, it's looking great, isn't it? Hey, oh my goodness. So yeah, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, Scott, Eric, and Josh all on 181 points. And then really close to the top as well between Kyle and Nikki. So, yeah, it's really shaping up to be a bit of a barnstorming end, isn't it?
Absolutely, it is. But we got to focus a little bit on what's coming up. I believe we've got a whole host of new graphics that we can bring up, Rich. And I was sort of hoping you'd be able to talk us through it potentially. If that is, Lewis has actually lined them up, which I'm assuming he has, because he's normally very good
Put him on the spot now, Jack.
I have, yeah, but he's normally very good at this part of the job. So, Rich, it's all about the prizes that we're going to be talking about for the next championship, isn't it? Is there anything that we can divulge?
Absolutely, yeah. So, so we've got a couple of different things starting. So the current championship, this one finishes on the 28th, and then the next championship, which is our GTV3 championship, GT Virtual, starts on the 1st of February. And we've got some great tracks there. Look, I'm really looking forward to that race. But also these cars, we've been doing a lot of testing and a lot of work on these cars to make them as good to drive as they look, and also as competitive against each other as they should be as well. So I'm really looking forward to that. We've actually changed the cars slightly. From the standard modification, where we've basically put an extra set of tyres on there, so they've got a choice of soft and medium tyres now. And with the other work we've been doing on them is basically just making sure that they're all nice and equal. So yeah, a lot of work going into this. So really looking forward to this championship. And not only that, we have some fantastic prizes as well. So we're lengthening out the prizes in this championship to go from first to fifth. Normally you do first to third, but we're going to do first to fifth. So first prize is a Camus simulation direct drive, 15 Newton meter direct drive wheel with base with wheel, and a trophy, of course. And then second place will get a GTF1 race seat for the simulator from Riggs, along with the trophy. And then third place, we've got a 27-inch Aegon by AOC display plus trophy as well. Going into fourth and fifth, we're going to do some 2 hours driver coaching here at VRRC for the fourth place, and then 1 hour sim practice for the fifth place driver at VRRC. We've also got the usual driver of the round medals to hand out. But then the other thing we're going to do as well is any driver that competes in at least 7 rounds and finishes the championship outside the top 5, so outside the prizes, there's basically a prize draw for 2 of those drivers to come and spend an hour at VRRC on our simulators as well. So really beefing up the prizes this time round. Fantastic championship. Those cars are epic to drive. They really are. We've been doing a lot of testing and we're really enjoying that testing. So really looking forward to that. But the other things that we've got going on before this starts and after the touring car finished, we've got a new time attack starting the 9th of January, and it's a front wheel drive special. So we're basically just getting quicker as we go through, starting in round 1 with the Fit Bath AC of Alalunga. It's a really good track, nice nimble car to get around those corners as well. Then we're going to go forward to the Audi TT with a hybrid, push to pass system, Oschersleben. Again, another fantastic track, quite tricky. Then we're going to step it up to the Mini JCW Mini Challenge car around Alton Island. Fantastic track, really good for hot lapping. And then we're going to finish off at the Cooper TCR with hybrid at Valencia Street Circuit. So that's really looking forward to that, getting that kicked off. Each round's 2 weeks, just under 2 weeks, 12 days. And then, as one finishes, we just go into the next. And then the other thing that we've got going on in between is a special event, a 3-race special event. So each Wednesday after the touring car is finished, so on the Wednesday night in this slot, we'll have 3 NASCAR races. Daytona International Speedway on the 4th, Auto Club Speedway on the 11th, and then Bristol Motor Speedway on the 18th. So something just a little bit different. We're going to trial out doing some racing from across the pond, which I know, Andy, you'll love. So lots going on.
Yes, sorry, stunned into silence with my excitement for NASCAR. I was there. Yes, really can't wait for that, Rich. I've been dropping little hints about NASCAR for a while now, and really looking forward to that. There is nothing quite like it, in my opinion. I'm fascinated to see how some of our regulars take to it.
Yeah, hopefully so. Hopefully they take to it well, because I quite like it as well. So if these ovals work well, then maybe we'll look at doing a championship with some cross oval and street and normal track circuits with NASCAR as well, because the car's great. It's the Race Sim Studio Hyperion NASCAR, so really good car to drive. Looking forward to it.
Good stuff. Thank you for joining us,
problem.
Rich. Some really exciting stuff coming up in the near future here at the VRRC. So whether you're a viewer, a wannabe racer, then heading over to the VRRC social media and Discord platforms is a good idea. Right, I think that's everything that we needed to get through. Big thank you, as always, to everyone who helps put these broadcasts together, to Jack for hanging on in there as my co-commentator. I do make life hard for you, Jack, sometimes. I don't mean to. Lewis
it is punishing. It is punishing, honestly. But
all in good fun. Lewis Edwards, who's been in control of the cameras, and of course Rich Hayden for masterminding the whole thing. And he is right. Whoever has come up with the script for this championship has done a very, very good job. 4 races to go. We'll be back again, same time, same place next week for the penultimate, and it will be the penultimate round at Imola in Italy. We'll see you then.